Hey everybody, it is Trags Mike Petralia back with another installment of the Jungle Roar podcast powered by our good friends at Prize Picks and of course the CLNS Media Network. I am in a great mood because I welcome back to the pod one of my very favorite guests, one of the charter guests, if I will, of the Jungle Roar podcast because he was the first, the one and only Dan Hoare, the voice of the Cincinnati Bengals, along with Dave Lapham. And it really means a lot to me, Dano, that you're doing this podcast in recovery. Obviously, you just had a little procedure on your shoulder to clean things up. Well, went a little deeper, I guess, than you expected.
I'm glad you're in a good mood, Trags. I'm miserable because
So
my right
sorry.
arm is in a sling. Let me stand a little bit here. So you can see the state of affairs. I expected to have a very minor shoulder procedure last Tuesday. It turned out to be more extensive than anticipated. So I'm going to be lugging around I see in this box, it looks like I'm wearing a man purse, but in truth, it's a sling. I'm going to be stuck in this thing for hopefully about a month, maybe a little bit less. But hey, worse things could happen. I'm on the road to recovery right now. And when it's done, hopefully I'll drive the golf ball much further than I've been driving it this year.
And as they say, you'll be ready to go for spring training camp in July.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. No, I should be fully recovered a little more than a month.
Oh, that's good, because we need to get out on the golf course, both of us together. I've been working on the game a little bit with the lovely Deborah Ann, and it's been going okay, but I keep telling her I need to get my game up so I can match Dan Hoare and not embarrass myself when I'm on the course with the play-by-play voice of the Bengals. All right, let's talk a little business here. The Cincinnati Bengals, Dan, by all accounts, I think it's safe to say, have had a very productive offseason. We don't know what that's going to mean yet in terms of wins and losses in 2026, of course. But the subject of this podcast here on the Jungle Roar is which off-season moves will mean the most to the Bengals when the season rolls around in September. And I think the obvious one is Dexter Lawrence, right? Bringing in a guy that is going to certainly boost their defensive line and I think have a ripple effect throughout their defense. But I want to get to some other moves that they have made as well. But we'll start with Dexter Lawrence. What is the biggest impact do you think he'll have specifically on that defense?
Trags, he's one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL and has been for the last 5 or 6 years. It's hard to add a guy like that. Dexter Lawrence is a freak. And the thing that stands out to me about him, having seen him now and been around him for a few instances, is that there are a lot of big, strong men in the NFL. But they don't move like Dexter Lawrence moves. It's no coincidence that the Bengals have been posting video of him sprinting in the offseason workout program, because for a 340 to 360 pound man, whatever he actually is, the guy is a phenomenal athlete, both in terms of his quickness, his speed, it's just his movement skills. So when you get a guy that's that big and that strong that can move like that, you've got one of the rarest genetic freaks in the NFL. He's only 28 years old. I think he has new motivation from being on a different team where there's a legitimate chance of advancing deep into the playoffs and hopefully to the Super Bowl. So I didn't see it coming. I was as shocked as everybody when I got that text on Saturday night that the deal had gone down. So it's a game changer. I think the Bengals had made very good moves before getting Dexter Lawrence.
Right.
But that move has completely changed the outlook, I think, for most people outside of Cincinnati that now look at this team as a legitimate threat to go a long way.
I was just getting off the golf course. Actually, was at the RBC in Hilton Head and had gotten back to our residence in Hilton Head and saw that text come through. And a friend of mine texted me and I was like, are you serious? And certainly, sure enough, I had the laptop open within about 30 seconds and found out it was accurate. And I was blown away myself. But I think it is a testament to what this offseason has been about to Duke Tobin, Katie Blackburn, Troy Blackburn, and Mike Brown. They they are been very serious about remaking the defense, and I think they put their money where their mouth is. Back to Dexter Lawrence for a moment, Dan. Uh, when people ask me what impact he'll have, I think it's twofold. I think he's going to have an impact, certainly in the middle of the defensive line, but he's also going to assist the guys on the edge. He's going to help the Boye Mafes get to the quarterback better, because the idea of having a Dexter Lawrence is not just to stop the run, it's to collapse the pocket, as Al Golden said. And by collapsing the middle of the pocket and pushing, creating a good amount of push towards the quarterback can't step up as easily, right? And if you have that ability to destroy the middle of the offensive line, then in theory, your edge rushers can get to the quarterback better. Secondly, I think if the offensive line is disrupted at the point of attack, the linebackers are going to certainly benefit, and the secondary is going to benefit, because the passing lanes won't be as obvious, and the quarterback, in theory, won't have as much time. To me, that's why improving the middle of the line with a guy like Dexter Lawrence means so much.
What's the hot expression these days, Trags? Force multiplier, right? That's what everybody uses. And Dexter Lawrence is a force multiplier for the reasons you just described. But it's even simpler than that. There's no player in the NFL that commands more double teams than Dexter Lawrence. Right. Even last year, when statistically he did not have a good year by his standards, he was double teamed as much as anybody in the NFL. So it's math. Instead of having 11 to block 11, you've got one less to block the rest of the guys, because two guys are on Dexter Lawrence at all times. So yes, that helps the edge rushers. You're going to have one-on-ones for Boye Mafe, Shamar Stewart, Myles Murphy, who's ever coming from the edge. And those linebackers who were up and down as rookies are going to have a lot more instances where there's not an offensive lineman quickly climbing to the second level to block them, because that guy is helping block Dexter Lawrence. So yes, he is a force multiplier. And then with a better pass rush, that makes things better for the secondary. So yeah, he helps in every possible way. I had the good fortune of being at Paycor Stadium the Sunday morning when Dexter arrived. I was there when he walked into the building. I was there when he went up to the top floor and met Mike Brown and Katie and Troy and the rest of the Brown Blackburn family members that were there. And I was also there when Zach Taylor walked into the building. So Zach was at a basketball tournament with his boys in Chicago. He specifically hustled back, caught an earlier flight or whatever to get back to Cincinnati and be there when Dexter arrived. So Dexter was literally alone in a conference room on the phone with his agent, going over the details of his contract extension when Zach walked in, and the embrace between Zach Taylor and Steve Radicevic from the Bengals front office was as telling as anything you could imagine. I mean, this was like they had won the AFC Championship game back in 2021 or January of 2022. It was that kind of joy for Zach and for Steven that the Bengals had pulled this off, and that guy was a few feet away signing his contract extension.
As Al Golden put it, you need 4 hands on him, not just 2. And I think that is a good way. Al Golden's got to be thrilled, and certainly is conveyed to us in the media opportunities we had during the recent NFL draft that, certainly the Bengals are going to be able to throw waves at the opposing offensive line, something they haven't been able to do in recent years. What you mentioned, Myles Murphy. And certainly news was made last week when the Bengals decided not to pick up the 5th-year option. I think it's a good move. It certainly obviously doesn't preclude the Bengals from pursuing a long-term deal with Myles Murphy, but I think this is kind of a prove-it year for Myles Murphy, no?
Yeah, but I don't think it's that as much as the salary cap situation following the offseason moves that they've made. Obviously, they are now almost, completely up to the spending level. I think they've got less than $5 million to spend, according to the various websites that calculate NFL spending. So the Bengals have to be looking at this and saying, all right, we would have loved to give him the 5th-year extension or the 5th-year option as a first-round draft pick from his year. But from that class, we want to re-sign DJ Turner. We'd like to re-sign Chase Brown. We would like to re-sign Miles Murphy. But in light of the money we've spent, now it's awfully tricky to plug in that $14 million for Miles and still get some of these other things done.
Right.
So if they could work out a longer extension where the immediate impact is less, I think they'd be interested in that. But I don't know about you, and I'm certainly not speaking for them, but I think if we're talking about the pecking order of the guys that I just described, DJ Turner's probably got to be at the top of the list from that draft class to try to get an extension done right away. And if you look at the top cornerback contracts in the NFL, I think there are probably 20 corners that are making at least $20 million a year. So DJ Turner, maybe he doesn't get that, but he's not going to come in much less. And I don't know, maybe it's going to cost a little more. I'm not sure where his agent and where the Bengals have him, on the pecking order of NFL corners at this stage of his career, but it's his second contract. It's a big one for a 25-year-old player. So he's not going to come cheaply, and he shouldn't after the way he played last year.
What about restructuring Joe Burrow's contract? There's been a lot of talk about that. A lot of other teams, or certainly other teams, I won't say a lot, but most notably the Kansas City Chiefs have done that with Patrick Mahomes. What about restructuring Joe Burrow's deal? Do you think that is a possibility in the near future?
Yeah, it's certainly a possibility. But when I read what fans say about this and the media to a lesser extent, it seems like one part of the argument is never brought up. And that is, when you do it, there is a cost. So if you push contract back now, you pay for it later. Now, the argument for that is that we'll just use round figures. $100 today doesn't count toward the cap as much as $100 tomorrow because the cap always goes up. So if you push money back, yeah, eventually you have to pay for it, but it doesn't count for as much of the cap. So that's part of the argument for pushing money back. But you do have to pay for it. And one of the reasons why the Bengals usually have some money to spend in free agency is that they don't push a lot of money back. They usually don't have a lot of dead cap. So the Bengals probably at some point during this Joe Burrow contract will have to restructure. Maybe not. But the longer you wait, the less of a punishment there is. And they haven't had to push it back yet, which is why they've had money to spend. So with some of the people that we described, in order to get extensions done, they might have to do it this year. Maybe they won't, but it's not like there's no cost for restructuring that contract. Every dollar is accounted for eventually. If you push it back now, there's more that you have to account for later on a per year basis. So I get a little bit frustrated when people talk about restructuring it like there's no, negative aspect to it. There is, which is why they're reluctant to do it. And I mean, if there was no penalty to doing it, then everybody would do it all the time. But there is. If you push it back now, there's more to account for later, which is why they would rather not do it until they're absolutely forced into a corner and have to do it.
And, and I'll counter that by saying, of course, there's cost to it, but it also allows you the ability to re-sign or pick up the extension of Miles Murphy, or to free up some cash or space, I should say, to get a DJ Turner extension done. And in this window of opportunity with Joe Burrow as the quarterback, I think most fans look at this and say, well, we want to maximize the opportunity we have with Joe Burrow while he's younger and then pay the piper down the road. Well, that's
the guys you just described aren't going anywhere. They're under contract. So an extension for DJ Turner would be nice, but he's on the team this year. An extension for Miles Murphy would be nice, but he's on the team this year.
That's 1 year, right, Dan? I guess what I'm saying is have them under contract for multiple years down the road if you see them as pieces for the future. And certainly, I think they see DJ Turner as a piece of their future.
Yeah, but we're talking about people saying your window is you're trying to win now. Well, you've already got those guys. So that's not going to impact your ability to win now. So now we're talking about next year and beyond. So if you restructure Burrow in order to extend those guys,
Right.
all right, next year in free agency, whatever hole that you have, because things change on a yearly basis, that might be an exterior free agent that you can no longer sign
Right.
because you push that money back. So do you like Brian Cook and Boye Mafe and Jonathan Allen and the guys that you got in free agency this year? Did you like the ability to extend Dexter Lawrence and make that trade? Well, had you pushed a lot of money back into your salary cap pool, you might not have been able to do that. So yeah, you're trying to win now, but you're also trying to win throughout the Burrow window. And less money that you push back will keep allowing you to add pieces that can help you win throughout this entire window, as opposed to right now and only right now.
I like that answer because the Bengals were able to take all of their flexibility. They used all of their flexibility, which is something I think the Blackburns and Mike Brown should be very commended for. I think they should absolutely be commended for using all of that available cash without having to restructure Joe Burrow. That's why we have you on, Dan, because that is terrific perspective about why you spend to your absolute maximum without restructuring. I think that's kind of what the Bengals have done. Now, like you said, there comes the possibility that there is a need down the road. They could, it sounds like to me, just based on what you said, and I agree with everything you said, that the restructure of Joe Burrow is probably not going to be done now because you've got all the pieces. There's no reason to go out and massively restructure Joe Burrow's contract if you feel you have all the pieces. I'm understanding that correctly, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, shoot, I'm just expressing my opinion here, Trags. They could do it tomorrow. And if they did it tomorrow, it would be, I would think, to extend the contracts of some of the guys that we're talking about. So, I just made the case that you don't have to extend DJ Turner right now. He's under contract for this year, but
Right.
you'd like to. You'd like to know that he's going to be part of a team for the next several years. You would prefer that he does not get to free agency if he has another fantastic year like he had last year. So that at least makes it a possibility. Now, that's not the only thing that they could do to create space. There's creative ways to structure. There's things like this.
Cap cuts.
Obviously, you can make cap cuts. So there are ways to do it that can be done without having to extend, or I'm sorry, restructure Joe's contract. But just the overall point that I'm trying to make is that I think the Bengals would prefer that is kind of the last resort as opposed to the first thing to do, rather than restructuring and kicking the can down the road. Let's try to find creative ways to fit as many of these contracts as we possibly can under the cap without having to do that.
He is Dan Horde, the one and only play-by-play voice of the Cincinnati Bengals. The regular season is wrapped and the NBA playoffs are finally here. And there's no better way to cash in on the high-flying hoops action than Prize Picks, a preferred partner of the NBA. Every bucket, every assist, and every win means more when you're playing on Prize Picks. So don't pass up your next shot with Prize Picks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. Do it live 2026 NBA Finals sweepstakes. Pick live squares during the NBA playoffs, and you could win a trip for two to the NBA Finals. To enter, you just make a $5 lineup with at least one live NBA player pick during any part of the 2026 NBA playoffs. Live player picks are picks made after a game is already in progress. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, a preferred partner of the NBA. Speaking of the NBA, Dan O, You grew up a Celtics fan, right?
I grew up a Buffalo Braves fan,
Oh, a Buffalo. That's
Trowels.
right.
I'm an
Yeah.
old man, so the Buffalo
As am
Braves
I.
existed in my childhood and broke my heart when they moved first to San Diego, now to LA, and became the Clippers. But I do root for the Celtics now. As you know, my wife Peg
Yes.
worked in Boston for many years and more or less grew up there. She spent part of her childhood abroad. But my son Sam, who turned 20 yesterday, happy birthday, Sam Horde. He loves the Celtics more than he loves me. So,
Oh.
because of his Celtics fandom and Pegs, I have become a Celtics fan. So, I was disappointed with the way things ended against the Sixers.
Yeah. Well, full disclosure, and I think I've made this public on some of my social posts. I'm a 76er fan. I grew up a 76er fan. Andrew Toney, Bobby Jones, Moses Malone, of course, Dr. J, and Maurice Cheeks, and
Caldwell Jones.
World B. Free, George McGinnis. How about those names? I go back to Dano.
Yeah, that's
Saturday
quite a
night
crew.
was it? Saturday night was an unexpected surprise for me, and 42 years in the making. By the way, 42 years
From
since
rallying. Well, they had never
from
rallied from a 3-1 deficit
3-1.
before the Sixers.
So
That long
without that
since they had
game,
beaten Boston in a playoff series?
yes,
Yeah.
that 44 years. What am I saying? 44 years. By the way, everybody knows the Beat LA chant. I think that is iconic throughout Americana sports tradition. Beat LA. Do you know where that started? I think you know the answer to this.
I don't.
Okay, well, you're going to learn something. It was Game 7 of the 1982 Eastern Conference Finals when the Sixers finally exorcised the demons of the Boston Garden, beat the Celtics, and in the last two and a half minutes of that game, when the game was pretty much no longer in doubt, you started hearing Beat LA chants reverberate throughout the old Boston Garden, Beat LA, because the Lakers had already made it to the NBA Finals. So that is where Beat LA emanated from.
Well, that's a great history lesson. Now you can tell us all when Bostonians began chanting Yankees suck at things
So
other than baseball games. So the Boston Marathon, I mean, any sort of public event in Boston where people gather, at some point, several of them will begin randomly chanting
just
Yankees suck.
Yes. Well, I heard, by the way, I heard that at Great American Ballpark last week. And I'm like, wait, well, okay, I know where I am. I recognize that a mile away, like you said. It was it was directed towards someone with an Aaron Judge jersey on in the third baseline. So anyway, enough of our frivolity. I want to get back to the Bengals and some of the moves that they have made. I guess we'll now move on to the NFL draft. Cassius Howell, I think, is a home run pick simply because in value at that number where the Bengals picked at 41. To get him in the second round, he's the reigning SEC Defensive Player of the Year. What are your thoughts on getting a guy like Cassius Howell opposite of Boye Mafe, in addition to Miles Murphy and Shamar Stewart?
I love it because they don't have a guy like him, and they haven't really prioritized guys like him in a long time. And by guys like him, I'm talking about slightly undersized, super twitchy, wide pass rush, speed rush kind of guy. They have prioritized with their high draft picks, at least a prototype, a 6'5", 280-pound, looks the part, should be able to defend the run kind of guy, a Miles Murphy, Shamar Stewart, going back, Carlos Dunlap, guys like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. Those guys are good players, or at least I think Shamar is going to become a good player. But I think in hopes of having waves, as you mentioned earlier, going after the quarterback this year, having a guy like that in the mix that presents a very different challenge for the opposing tackles is good. And I know this, every year after the first round of the draft, the Bengals, like all NFL teams, have everybody meet and reorganize the board based on what happened in round one. So these guys were taken. We had them as possible second round picks. Now they're gone. We're going to reorganize. So the Bengals had the 9th pick in the second round this year. At the end of round one, when they reorganized their board so that they had 9 guys listed for, who they would select when they were on the clock, the number one guy on their day 2 board was Cassius Howell. So that's how they felt about him when day 2 began. They were able to get him with the 9th pick. They didn't have to trade up and give away, a pick later in the draft that they would have wanted to use. So I think it worked out exactly as they had hoped. And I'm excited about Cassius Howell. I think he's really going to add something that they need.
I like the pick. When people ask me about this draft, the pick that intrigues me the most is Tacario Davis. He's 6'4". I know you covered him in college at UC. You were the play-by-play voice, of course, of the UC Bearcats as well. And I brought up this analogy, and I'm not saying that they're on anywhere close to being on the same talent level or production level in college, but I see Sauce Gardner. I see the same body type. Perhaps Davis is a little bit stronger, maybe a little more sinewy, wiry, whatever you want to call it. But I do think he is a fascinating has fascinating potential in the Bengals secondary to cover bigger, longer receivers.
Sinewy.
Showing
off your Villanova education. That's impressive, Travis.
Yeah, I'm no Newhouse grad, but I try.
So the Bengals had a draft party for VIPs and season ticket members on the final day of the draft. And the 2 players that were selected on day 2 were flown in. I did a Q&A at that event with Cassius Howell and Tacario Davis. And at the end of it, I took a picture. I posted it on my Instagram account, I guess, Facebook, whatever. And in that picture, Tacario Davis towers over me. I'm not short. No. I've shrunk a little bit as I get older, but I'm about 6'2". He's all of 6'4". And seeing him face to face really was striking to me. I mean, he is highly unusual among somebody with his speed and his ability to flip his hips and stay with, top wide receivers. I think he gives them a press man type corner that is perfect for Al Golden's defensive principles. So I'm really excited about that pick. I didn't know that much about him at Washington. UC hasn't played them over the years. So I've learned more about him after the selection than I knew about him going into the draft. But I think it's a really intriguing pick, and I think he's going to contribute right away.
What about Connor Lew as a potential backup to Ted Karras? I think, again, this is a home run pick. It's stunning to me. He's only 20, and I brought this up to Zach Taylor, and Zach, I think you were there, Dan, in that press conference, and Zach joked, when I was 20, I was still a junior college quarterback, wherever it was, and he's 20, and he's already made 25 starts in the SEC, a captain. He's got wrestling background. What's not to like about Connor Lew?
Well, what's not to like is that he's coming off a torn ACL in October. So that's going to be the question mark. He says he'll be ready to go in training camp. We'll see. I think the Bengals, when they talked about it, sounded that they're going to take a very cautious approach, and they should. Yep. Like you said, he's 20 years old. So they've got the long term to think about with him. I've read a lot of scouting reports about Connor Lew. It sounds like there were plenty of people out there that considered him the best center in this draft if he had not been hurt. Even those that didn't have him at the top had him in the top 3 or 4. So he might have been a second-round pick if not for the injury. The Bengals got him in the 4th. I think he was something like number 70-something on the consensus board when you tallied up all of the, draft gurus out there. And the Bengals got him much later than that. So I think it's a great value pick. I think if he lives up to his potential, he could be Ted Karras's successor. And if that turns out to be the case and you get that guy in the 4th round, then that's a tremendous selection.
Obviously, eyebrows were raised when they selected Colby Young in the 4th round. And, obviously a lot of people are thinking back to Jermaine Burton, went through Georgia as well. And I'm just curious, when people say the upside of Colby Young, what do you see as his upside? Is it something that's going to take time to develop? Is it something where you feel like if he proves to the coaching staff and his teammates he can be trusted, he can get on the field right away and contribute? How do you see that?
You know what? Forget about how I see it, Trags. Let's talk about how Dylan Fairchild sees it, because they were teammates 2 years ago at Georgia. And I don't know if Dylan Fairchild can do cartwheels at his size, but verbally he did them after this pick. I talked to him about uh, that selection, Colby Young, a few days ago, and he was like, unbelievable player, great person. Yeah, he had an incident that ultimately he was not charged for. Georgia welcomed him back.
Yep.
The accuser retracted the accusation. And he could not have spoken more highly of him as a person, as a teammate, as a leader, as a player. So I'm taking Dylan Fairchild's word for it. And I can't wait to see Colby Young take the field in the upcoming rookie minicamp.
I love that answer, Dan. Also, we're going to go over the final three picks and maybe get your quick thoughts, maybe one word, two, not one word, but one sentence, one line answers on each of them. Brian Parker, uh, he is a Cincinnati product, obviously, went to St. X, grew up in Indian Hill. Brian Parker the second, Jack Endries, Landon Robinson. Your thoughts on each of those players?
Give you 2 words for Brian Parker. Those 2 words are Dave Lapham. So Dave Lapham is the most
Yeah, all
versatile
five
offensive
positions.
lineman in
Yes.
franchise history. He famously played all 5 positions in a single game twice in his NFL career, which is mind-boggling to me.
Unbelievable.
And the Bengals say that Parker is capable of playing all 5 positions. He was an All-American tackle in college. He was a center in high school at St. X. It's hard to find somebody with that much versatility. So I think he probably profiles as a backup guard and center initially with the ability to play tackle in a pinch. That's extremely valuable. And we talked about Connor Lew as a potential successor to Ted Karras whenever Ted's NFL career is finished, but could turn out to be Brian Parker. Who knows? Maybe once those two guys get on the field and the Bengals see them every day, Brian Parker ultimately proves to be a better starting candidate as a center in the NFL. So my 2 words for him are Dave Lapham. Jack Endries, this NFL draft featured the second most tight ends ever taken. I think 22 tight ends were selected. Endries probably would have been a 4th or 5th round pick in a normal NFL draft. The Bengals got him in the 7th round. I think 2 years ago, when he had Fernando Mendoza throwing to him, he looked like one of the better tight end prospects in this class. Last year, it didn't work out quite as well for him statistically. So I think the Bengals really like his potential as a receiving tight end with Joe Burrow throwing him the football. We'll see. We'll see if he can figure into the mix right off the bat. And refresh my memory on the final.
Landon Robinson.
Yeah, Landon Robinson. How can you not love Landon Robinson? I mean, his dad listens to my podcast. we learned from Jeff Hobson on Bengals.com this week.
Yes,
so
we did.
I began studying Landon Robinson when Cincinnati played Navy in the Liberty Bowl. So I knew a lot about his character and the year that he had for Navy going into that game. I can't wait to see him in action. He's undersized, obviously,
Right.
but he had been on the freaks list, the Bruce Feldman freaks list of the top 100 athletic freaks in college football, I think 3 times in a row at Navy. So he's got unbelievable strength and quickness that allow him to make up for the fact that he's probably about 20 pounds less than you would like at defensive tackle. He's a little bit under 300. So I think a tremendous value pick. The fact that, he's coming out of the Naval Academy speaks to his leadership and his character. So I'm really excited to see Landon Robinson in action.
When you say that, Dan, the freaks part of it, and that he is athletically gifted, unlike any player at that position. I do think of Chris Jenkins Jr. and what his reputation was coming out of Michigan. I understand they're probably different style players, although I guess they could kind of both play the three tech. Is that right? Is that your understanding?
I'm not sure that that's what Landon did at Navy as much as being more over the ball, but he's certainly going to be tried all over the
Everywhere.
interior
Yeah.
portion of the defensive line.
All right. Before we get to something not football related, I want to go over some of the other moves and see if any of these stand out to you significantly and why. They re-signed tight end Mike Gesicki to a 3-year contract, re-signed right guard Dalton Reisner. Obviously, in free agency, they acquired Boye Mafe, Brian Cook, Jonathan Allen, Kyle Duggar, and Jasir Taylor. Any of those moves stand out to you?
Hell yeah.
Which ones?
Brian
All
Cook.
of them?
Brian Cook. So of all of the free agents that were out there, Brian Cook was the player I most wanted the Bengals to sign. Now, part of this is because I know him. I like him. He's a great kid. I say kid. He's a grown man with 2 kids. But, I saw Brian Cook's development firsthand at UC. So he comes out of Mount Healthy High School, way undersized, goes to Howard initially to play corner, transfers home, basically sat out his first year, getting bigger and stronger under the strength department they had then under Luke Fickell. And then after that, blossomed into an All-American safety. And he gives the Bengals something that they haven't had in a while at that position, in my opinion. And that is somebody that puts the fear of God into wide receivers and tight ends that run over the middle of the field. Brian Cook is going to hit you, and you're going to feel it, not in a dirty way. He's not going to get called for personal fouls and things like that, but he plays with an edge. Geno Stone did not play with an edge. Brian Cook is a great tackler. He's a hard hitter. He's rangy. He can get to the ball. He can intercept passes. He can get his hands on passes. That position has not been a strength for a long time since Jesse Bates. I think it's a strength again with Brian Cook. He was the highest graded available safety in this class. The Bengals aggressively went out and signed him. So I was thrilled by Boye Mafe as well. And I think Jonathan Allen, still has something left in the tank. But the guy that I most wanted them to sign of anybody available this offseason was Brian Cook. So I was over the moon when they got that done.
All right, we're going to wrap up here with Dan Horde talking about something not football related, but the passing of a great baseball play-by-play man, the one and only John Sterling, at the age of 87. He passed away. The news was reported on Monday. Dano, you're a Met fan, or you grew up a Met fan.
I was
certainly.
a Met fan, yeah.
Yeah, you were a Met fan. And the story you recanted to me, you regaled me of before we started recording, it made me laugh out so loud that the walls shook around me. And that's hyperbole, not by much. I want you to go over that July 4th story because I believe you were telling me it was your rookie year of broadcasting Syracuse Chiefs baseball. And for those who don't remember, it was July 4th, 1985. It was the Rick Camp game. Proceed.
Yes. So you brought this up before we started recording this podcast. We were talking about the passing of John Sterling, legendary Yankees radio voice. If you've heard the Yankees win, Yankees win, that was John Sterling. Marty Brennaman has imitated that over the years. John Sterling's an interesting cat. He's not universally loved among baseball announcers because he was a showman. So he had these scripted home run calls for every player on the Yankees roster. And some announcers didn't like that. I loved it because John Sterling was one of one. I like unique announcers, and very few have been more unique than John Sterling. So I am a John Sterling fan. Rest in peace. So, as we were talking about his passing, you brought up the fact that he was on the mic as a Braves announcer on TV, TBS, back in 1985 for this famous game between the Mets and the Braves. I was watching, I guess actually, now that I think of it, I probably was watching it on TBS. I was thinking earlier when we chatted that I was watching a Mets telecast, but it was probably on TBS because I was not in the New York area. So I was a first year announcer, having just graduated from Syracuse. I was doing the AAA Syracuse Chiefs. But at that point, I was still a New York Mets fan. So when I could, I still watched the Mets games on TV. So I was on the road. We were in Tidewater, Virginia, which was the home of the Mets AAA Farm Club at that time. I called a game on the 4th of July. I went back to my hotel room at the Admiralty, which was the very inexpensive hotel that the Syracuse Chiefs stayed in at that time. I turned on the TV. Mets Braves are on. So I started watching it. And I am one of probably very few that watched to the bitter end. The game went 19 innings. There may have been a rain delay in there at some point. I think it ended at like 4 a.m, something like that. I watched the whole thing. It's known as the Rick Camp game because the Mets scored a run in the top of the 18th to take a 1-run lead, and pitcher Rick Camp had to bat for the Braves in the bottom of the 19th. They had nobody left to pinch hit, and he hit a home run. It's probably the least likely home run, right up there with Bartolo Colon a few years ago.
Yes.
It's one of the least likely home runs ever hit in baseball history. It tied the game in the bottom of the 18th. The Mets then scored 5 runs in the top of the 19th. The Braves came back with 2 in the bottom of the 19th, but the Mets held on to win 16-13. John Sterling called the Rick Camp home run, and his call was fantastic. But yeah, I'm in this crummy hotel room watching that game until the bitter end. And because it was a 4th of July game, the Braves held off on the fireworks show until the game ended. So it's something like 4 a.m. After a 16-13 Mets win. They set off the fireworks show at the old Fulton County Stadium, and residents of Atlanta began frantically calling 911, thinking Atlanta was being bombed as the fireworks went off at 4 a.m. Maybe the most incredible game in Major League Baseball history.
It is certainly up there. And I think John Sterling's call, and I'm paraphrasing here because I don't want to get it wrong, but he said, if Rick Camp hits this home run, it will go down as certifiably the wackiest, craziest baseball game in history. 2 pitches later, boom. And it's ironic to me, and it's one of the beauties of baseball, that John Sterling can certainly have a Hall of Fame career, calling 5 World Series championships for the Yankees, all of Derek Jeter's career, all of the accolades he has working with Susan Waldman. That's baseball, Susan. It's my favorite John Sterlingism, by the way. That's baseball, Susan. But his one defining moment for me is his call of that Atlanta Braves game against the New York Mets. It's just phenomenal. And that's why broadcasters like yourself, they offer so much character and memories to people who listen to the game that they'll never forget. They'll take with them for a lifetime. So I think, and it's appropriate to bring it up with you for many different reasons, but you have certainly provided so many memories for Bengals fans, Dano. Thanks for coming on, by the way.
Thanks for the kind words, Trals. You know, the thing about John Sterling, as I mentioned, are a lot of announcers that didn't necessarily love his work, but all Yankee fans did. And that's what matters. He might not have been universally respected by his peers because of his showmanship and some of the unique things that he did, but I've never heard a Yankee fan say anything other than I love John Sterling. So he developed that bond with his audience, and really that's the only bond that matters.
It's coffin nails on this Jungle Roar podcast. You see what I did there, Dano? You
like bam, that? Bam, bam.
Thanks, Slap. All right. He is Dan Horde, the one and only voice of the Cincinnati Bengals. Be sure to listen to his podcast From the Booth, right, Dan?
The Bengals Booth Podcast.
The Bengals Booth
Bengals
Podcast.
Booth, yeah.
Thank you. Wherever you download your favorite podcast. Hope you do the same with this podcast. I want to thank our terrific sponsor and our good friends at Prize Picks, and of course, everybody at CLNS Media that helps get this podcast up on every platform where you download your favorite podcast. He is Dan Horde. I'm Mike Petralia. And until next time, you know the drill. Keep that jungle roaring.